Hello. So, some good discussion going on Bloom and American Gnosticism. Um, Briefly, I just want to be kind of fair to Bloom. Now, I do think he's a little bit pompous in his approach. Um, he's a very intelligent man, a well-read man, and he knows it. That said, to be fair, I think a lot of times we say, well, he's not unbiased. Um, I don't think, to some of you are complaining about his kind of lack of bias, and he seems to be coming from a very kind of haughty position of he knows it all. Recognize that he's not trying to say he's unbiased observer. He admits, number one, to being a Jewish Gnostic. Number two, what we need to question, what we need to ask ourselves is, does the evidence he presents support his bias? Now, obviously, we could question if we wanted to go deeper, which we're at a fairly introductory level, so we're probably not going to go too much deeper than what he presents. But we'll beyond, like, we're looking at Finney, right? We're looking at Charles Finney. He mentions Finney, so we're going to look at Charles Finney. And we're going to look at Frederick Douglass writing about the Christianity of his slave masters. And so the question we have is there, he's presenting a theory. He's saying, this is my argument, this is my bias, here's why I hold that bias. Look at this thing, look at this thing, look at this, right? So that's his point. There's this Orphic Gnostic experience in the reports of religious revivals and religious experience in America. When you read different writings about religious experience, you get this sense about the centrality of knowledge, the emphasis placed upon experience in an emotional sense. He's drawing a lot from the religious critic James, who defines religion as this kind of almost emotional experience. So his position is not unfounded. The question is, how strong is it based on the evidence he presents? And I think the two things we want to look at are, okay, so the revivals in the South. Frederick Douglass's experience, where he talks about his master going off to these revivals and then not, coming back and beating him even worse, essentially, treating him even worse. So is that kind of an Orphic Gnostic thing? This master thinks he's achieved some holiness that he might even pass on to slaves, but can't see kind of the nose despite his face, right? He can't see what's right in front of him is this horrible wickedness that he's guilty of, and enslaving other people made in the image of God. That's what slavery is. It's this horrible, evil thing, and he's doing it, this master is doing it, and yet he thinks himself very holy because he's had this kind of ecstatic, spiritual, emotional experience at this revival meeting. On the flip side, it's been argued that Charles Finney, with the Second Great Awakening, is really kind of remaking the American religion. He is... I'm trying to remember now if it's one of the documentaries or if it's Bloom himself that says basically that Finney is the founder of American religion. I think that's in the documentary. So if that documentary is accurate, right, if Finney's the one who really made America for any amount of time a Christian nation, well, look at his sermon. What is he calling people to? Is it an emotional Orphic experience, or is he calling them to this kind of transformed life? So read the bits from the biography, read the sermon, what he's talking about, changing the way you act, changing what you do politically. So I guess the question is the Cane Ridge slave master that goes back and beats his slaves as bad as ever the rule, or is it the exception? Or is Finney the rule, or is he the exception? Or can we argue for one consistent American religious experience? Or during the 17 and 1800s, especially leading up to the Civil War, are there two Americas? It's another potential question. So just some things to think about as we continue looking at Finney, looking at the essays from the portions of the writing from Frederick Douglass.